It's an option we have now, that we, what do we do with the extra money?
No, if our fund balance is gonna stay at the, right there at 4.7 million. My point is the last few years, you know what my question was, right?
Yeah.
So I was asking you.
Yeah,
We can be aggressive with the 1.4, that's in the wage option,
so I can make this 0 right now, and just say no.
but I don't know if that's fair
No,
or
it's
staff.
I'm gonna ask that, that's not what I'm saying, to wipe that out. I'm saying that, I'm just asking that right now, what you've just proposed is just keeping the fund balance instead of giving us what the accountant said,
Keep
a
in
little
mind-
higher.
Yep, keep in mind that, even though we're gonna put the $5,112,000, I think we're gonna do better this year. We'll probably have $500,000 in back, for the end of this year, unless something happens in a couple of months, but we're gonna come in better than expected. And there's also a contingency even in this, budget again, so if we did nothing, we certainly, would probably come in at $6 million by the end of this fiscal year.
And then you said that was based off the $228 increase, which is the more conservative number between the State House and the State Senate. Now, do you foresee any roadblocks in that increase? Because I know the budget has not yet been approved. It's not expected to be approved until June.
Right. I think the one hurdle that was there was the statewide cyber academies, I think.
That was one.
The shared time. And so that's why some of them was moved from 238 down to 228. So they took $10 out of the foundation allowance and spread it to support those programs.
And I know previously before, just some of the politics of Lansing, where they put out an increase, but then at the end of the day, or the bottom line, it's generally not as much of an increase as it looks. Is that something that we would foresee, or is that something that we equate into this?
What could always happen. Right now, last year they stayed true to what they said they were going to do by this time of the year. I mean, we don't go with this budget presentation, but we ask for board vote towards second meeting in June. So if something happens in May, but they all know that school districts are trying to shore up where they're at. And so this is the information that they're giving to us right now.
And it's an election year, so I
Yes.
think it would be a very unpopular thing.
Right.
And so we have a little more confidence
That's a
in the
good
number,
point.
which is.
Exactly.
As far as the enrollment loss, you said we were at 3, went to 350. A couple people think that should even be higher. How are we coming up with that number?
We had, we do two outside companies. One is Indoor Cities, does an enrollment projection for us, and then the other one is Spartagonovich from Michigan State. These Stanford consultants. They do projections for probably most of the districts in the United States.
And what was it? The recent media coverage kind of debacle, which kind of made us raise it to 350. You see, that's going to be a impact though.
So when I look at this, really this is about the saving, or getting the savings that we need comes from the big hunk is losing or not replacing 10 teachers. We continue to get 10 in retirement.
Yeah. Oh no, those will be replaced. The $300,000 for 10.
That's the savings from high end to lower
Correct.
end salaries and
Correct.
benefits.
And that's just based on our typical number of retirements, which has been around 10.
Okay, then where we, I guess
There's a natural shrinkage with students
right.
ratio, so it's a natural shrinkage of teachers, not the cutting of extra teachers beyond natural.
Right, but it's 10 teachers is what are gonna retire and not be replaced.
No, 10 people
No.
they retire and we're replacing that for
Replacing them with cheaper teachers.
Oh.
BA step.
But how if we're losing 350 students?
That's the first.
That's the first
That's
line.
the first
one
line,
point.
the 1 point,
For one
or
point.
1.5 million.
So a question.
I'm sorry, so if we're losing 350 students, there's not gonna be a teacher loss attached to that many students?
Oh, yeah, it's the 14 FTE, that's that 1
Okay,
million.
for 14 students,
Yeah,
or
for
teachers we're losing without
Correct.
replacing.
Correct.
Okay, And we talked before when we had our study session,
Actually, you know what, technically, if we're gonna do 400, it would be 16.
So,
It's a budget basic math, so just for the listening audience, the idea there is that if we're projecting that we're gonna lose 400 students, then we would calculate based on the number of students in a classroom, we would need that many fewer teachers. It doesn't mean we're gonna lay off those teachers. Typically, we make those, we are able to achieve those numbers based on attrition and in fact, it's budgeted there. But from a number standpoint, you want to add in, okay, if we're saying we're going to have that much less per pupil foundation allowance, we also would need a correlating fewer number of teachers there to teach those students. If we had those students, we need the reduction of those teachers. So it's a give and take, and you want to balance it out on the equation from a balance sheet from a budget standpoint.
And from a budget point of view, we've done this consistently, and we last year was, this year's example, we've hired a large number of new teachers,
Right.
even though perhaps in a budget session a year ago, it looked like we were cutting 14 teachers. I don't know the number off my head, but it's
12.
12, right?
Do we have any projection on when this enrollment decrease year after year after year is gonna stop? I mean, are all these experts giving us any type of time frame? I mean, it seems like every year I've been here, we're looking at 300 kids lost, 400 kids lost. At some point, where are we gonna be? I mean, when is this gonna stop?
we know that the last 3 years, our kindergarten numbers have gone up, and so that's good. The problem is our graduating seniors are in the 800s, and our incoming kindergartners are in the 600s. So we've got, the gap right there. But the kindergarten numbers are coming up. But the folks who do the demographics do have us, going out several more years, until we can close that gap.
I think the number's 7,500. I think that's one of the things I read that's where they.
Where we would plateau.
one of the things that we talked about on the,
Mary, you want me to scroll up or you?
no, yeah, the 16, yeah. One of the things we talked about the day that just the three of us had the meeting, the budget meeting with, and Keith was there, and I might have brought it up before, is that the 16 FTE, I'm bothered that that's just like the given, that we're just like, we just cut the teachers because the kids aren't there, because that doesn't have to be the automatic choice. We could keep, we could only cut 10 teachers or 6 teachers, and then that would, change class sizes and change different things. So I guess I'm just saying it's just like this automatic that it has to be that way, but I thought, these kinds of sessions are to brainstorm. And we talked before about having options offered to us, like, and that exactly it. What if we don't cut the 16 teachers? What if we only cut 6 and then make cuts in other places? This is just, again, this is all on the backs of right in the building. And again, I brought it up before.
Where would you get another 1.1 million, or where would you get 400,000, whatever you're using for 4 teachers or 10 teachers? Where would you get that from?
Well, I think with Mary, if I can jump in, and I've always kind of been under that, I think that's for the administration to bring to us options. It's their job. We say yes or no, but it's the options they need to bring to us. What other option is there? I don't think.
Well, it's a push and a shove. You keep here, you cut somewhere. That's.
And I get it. I think she agreed that.
So, many of us have been through a large number of these budgets where we have made cuts, real hard cuts. And to me, though this is a cut where you say, I'm losing this amount of students and I'm going to take 16 less teachers, that's a cut. To me, that's not a harmful, hard cut. My experience has been, if you don't do it here, then let's put the whole list of hard cuts back on the board, and I'm sure Bill can pull the list back out, and let's cut the hard cuts.
Why don't we do that? I mean, why don't we look at?
Because I don't want to do the hard cuts this year. I think we can do the hard cuts.
There's other areas we can look, and I think what we talked about previously when we had our when we talked about the budget back in February at our community conversation that we ended up having, that was supposed to be a special meeting, there was talk about administrative pay. What is the average
You want to lose more
administrator?
administrators?
No, well, if they choose to leave, if they get a small cut, what does an average administrator make in this district?
Well, what do they make next door too? That's what you look
Well,
at.
I'm asking Keith.
Well, I'm telling you, you've been on the board long enough to see administrators leave, just like we lose teachers, because we don't pay
But it's
them.
not all about pay. If you have a job and all you care about is the pay, then you're in the wrong field.
It's not about pay, it's about respect.
You just said
It's
it was about pay.
No, but I'm saying, if you don't
Respect is treating people fairly.
But it's also.
So we're cutting
treating
people because they don't
and
treat
paying
people
them
fairly, or we don't want to
And
pay them?
paying them fairly. Okay, so let's look at teachers, right? So Mary is saying that do we necessarily have to lay off teachers? Or,
We're not
okay, do we necessarily have to decrease our number of teachers? Not lay off, we're talking about attrition, okay. So that's been established, but have we looked at smaller class size? Where do we compare to other districts? And this is just some of the ideas. This is why we're having this session here, is to discuss this, because these are some of the questions that we did raise at that first meeting that we had and the second one, and I'm surprised that Keith and administration haven't come with some options, because we did ask these questions
You're
months
talking
ago.
about painful things, though. This is not a painful cut. This does not mean laying off teachers. This means keeping class sizes exactly as they are today. It's the cause and effect. So there is no real pain associated with this. If we have to find 1.16 million, first of all, right away, we can't give money to our teaching and staff. Unless you're gonna find 1.16 million, and what, I guess I don't know what problem we're trying to solve here. We don't have a problem here.
Well,
We haven't even tried to find.
We haven't even tried that.
You're creating a problem.
You're creating a problem where there isn't
By
one.
saying, let's not cut back we have this population, as it shrinks, we should not cut back the staff that supports that.
You're deciding instead that
Can I
it's more
just ask
important to
one
have smaller
question?
class sizes.
Class size. So where do we stand in comparison to other
Should be
districts?
asking that, not John. 'cause
You can ask everybody that,
I'm
that's why it's a
asking-
study
But it'd be
session.
nice to ask.
All right, if I just a point,
Teachers don't cut.
just a point of order, if I could,
Teachers does not cut down on class.
can I ask Keith,
Right,
where
it's
do we
not-
stand on
It's
class
not
size?
enough to cut down on class.
Guys, we gotta quit interrupting. I mean,
Yeah,
here
I mean,
we go.
can you let
Even God,
Keith
he's trying to
answer
ask
the
a
question?
question, he's getting answered by 3 board members instead of administration. Come on, guys.
Okay, so let me ask the question, Keith, where do we stand on class size? In comparison to
I
others?
didn't know that was gonna be a question, I did not really prepare.
I didn't know it was gonna be a question either. until
I'll bet you a quarter, I know where it's at.
But I did.
It's generally probably, if you take the cost of a district, how much money comes in, the value, how much we get per pupil. We're about right in the middle of the county. I bet our class size are right in the middle. I'll bet
Stand
you,
by that?
I'll
Yes,
stand by
because
that.
We have
I'll stand by
benchmarked
that.
this. We have benchmarked this. I would also add, just in this particular example, I just want to point out, if we were to reduce this by 6, first of all, that is not going to have an appreciable impact when you multiply the number of teachers that we have. It is not going to have an appreciable impact on class size. It is not, if your goal here is to reduce class sizes and instead make some painful cut somewhere else, your goal does not, you will not achieve your goal with 6 people.
So we're looking at 1 so we're looking at that figure up there, right? So I guess I bring it back to the question that has been raised in the past with regard to administrative pay. And this is just a question to Keith that I would like him to answer, and he's answered this for me before. What does the average administrator here in central office make in our district, and then our building administrators as well?
At what level?
So just,
What I brought with me was, assistant superintendent, high school principal, middle school principal, elementary
so
school
if we could go
principal,
assistant superintendent.
compared to, the 4 districts around.
Just the
Walled
number,
Lake,
that's all I'm
Clarkson,
asking
West
for.
Bloomfield, Huron Valley. Assistant superintendent, approximately 126,000, which puts us at the lowest among the 5 school districts.
Which
It's the
school
lowest
districts?
Walled Lake, Clarkson, West Bloomfield, Huron Valley. The high being Walled Lake at 137 for the same position, Huron Valley 136, and Clarkson, West Bloomfield at about the same 128.
And then how many assistant superintendents do they each have, and how many do we have?
We have 2, I don't know how many they have, they're all.
Well, their titles,
Our titles might be different.
And they're similar sized districts except for Walled Lake, which is larger, so it's possible Walled Lake would have more than us.
Here's what I challenge you to do, because it's come up before and I've done it. You take the top paid teacher, divide that into per hours. Then you look at a principal, and then you add the number of hours that they're required to work, and put that multiplication of just per hour. Don't even include the extra hours that you put above and beyond that. And a beginning principal or principal is probably making less per hour than the top paid teacher in their building. So now you want to cut that.
I'm not saying the principal. I didn't.
You're
say,
saying administrators. Who are you talking about?
I'm talking about central administration is what my question is.
So you want to save what? $20,000?
I'm just asking, John. I don't know why you're so defensive.
Because I'm tired of losing administrators.
Right.
If you look at it, it's like the last 5
I'm tired
years.
of losing teachers. You know, I'm tired of,
I'm tired of that, but we're not
you
at
think of the
teachers.
top and you're not thinking of the bottom as well. How much does the average teacher make in this
That's what we're
district?
trying to do here. And if you,
That's it.
if you take away this, all it does is cost us more, and it doesn't save what you're trying to save.
And I'm not expecting that we're going to save what we're trying to save, but I'm saying we have to start somewhere.
There seems to be
Why?
a fundamental, underlying, pervasive, comes up every conversation in one way, shape, or form, that you believe that we need to reduce our central office staff.
No. I'm looking strictly at pay, and I'm looking at what's equitable for teachers,
I just told you.
social workers, and this is the other question that I have. And, you know, this is about social workers, right? We've just dealt with this whole bullying issue, which has created a whole lot of problems with regard to social emotional issues in our schools. We've identified that. We're talking about it right now. And it's attributing to a loss in students here in our district. What are we doing besides the bullying task force, which I'm fully in support of, and that's another question that I have, but what are we doing to hire more social workers to help us? Do we have that built into the budget, I guess, is my question.
I didn't know that was the solution to the problem yet.
Haven't you been to the community forums?
Why
and-
was that the
Absolutely.
solution?
I didn't know there was a solution to
Well,
that.
I guess, board feedback, does anybody think it's a good solution? I do.
Here's
given
what I'm
my
saying. I'm
background.
saying we have cut hard. We have cut hard. Our employees have cut hard. This budget, as first presented, does not require any more hard cuts, and there's a possibility that maybe we start giving staff back some money or something financial. I don't sense, I know you guys three met, I understand that, and I'm tired of hearing it.
We didn't meet.
You said,
Sir.
you keep saying that when the three of you met about a budget. I don't, okay, this point forward, I'm just saying, I don't think this
No, it was the
board,
three of us and Keith.
I'm talking about board members.
Okay. Well, you need to be accurate in your language, sir.
Okay,
And the
when
community
you
as well.
and the community met three
Okay,
people.
well, what you're implying is something.
No, what I'm
that is
implying is,
inappropriate,
I don't think
sir.
that represents the board as a whole. And I think the board as a whole is tired of making cuts and are prepared to push get a budget that goes through that makes logical cuts where we need to make logical cuts, which is following population numbers and not affecting staff.
I enjoyed this budget because, again, this is the first time I've come in a long time after doing this for 20 years. First couple of years, we gave money, we had extra money. But the last 15, 17, we've been cutting with column A, B, or C. What dies? This here doesn't. We lose teachers as we lose students because when my boys left home, my grocery bill went down. I don't buy the same amount of groceries when I lost the people that were eating them. When I lose students, I lose the teachers that were teaching them. It's common sense to me. We've been doing this for years and years. This is a nice, simple, clean, well thought out budget by the people that are doing their jobs. Bill's job is to get us a budget. This is a wonderful budget that does a little bit of everything. There's a small amount left to possibly give the employees something back. I wish it were more. I would like to see more, but we don't have more. Again, my boys tell me there's rainbows and unicorns and all these other wonderful things. I haven't seen them. They're not real. This budget is, and I'm very appreciative to this. I don't understand the argument. You wanna reinvent the wheel. It sounds.
I think the only thing that was asked was, can we have choices other than this is it? And I don't think there's not one person here at this table who wants to do any serious hard cuts. I don't think there's one person at this table that doesn't want to give our employees more money. I think the only thing that was raised was, could there be an option? And I mean, this is nice, but maybe there's an option that could come out that would even be nicer. We don't know because this is all we're given. And that's all that was, please let me finish. All that was asked was, is there a second option or a third option? And chances are, it would come back to this option. You know, this is not bad. I think we like this, but it's more of a question of, what if we did try to keep those additional 16 teachers and maybe even added more? We hear all the time we hear it'd be so much nicer if class sizes were smaller. Maybe there's some way we can add a few more teachers and make class sizes smaller, which will bring more people into the community to want to be here, which all of a sudden now we're going up. It's just, it's looking at different options, and instead of just taking it as is, this is it, and we're happy and let's move on. I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but an option or two would be nice.
An option for cuts, I'm not clear what direction we're going here.
An option, who knows where? I don't know.
But define what your options are you're looking for. Because we stood up at a board meeting a few weeks, a month ago, talking about the revised budget, like, we're all like, great, no cuts. So if it's not cuts, I'm just trying to clarify what you're talking about when you want to see options, if you don't want to see cuts.
You know what, I don't know what options it would be, John. It would just be, instead of this, what if we kept the 16 teachers? Where would it be?
Well,
Maybe there'd be some.
You can scroll down. You
So you're
can
talking
add
about
16
cuts.
teachers, and the wage option, it goes down to $300,000.
Bill, can you maybe just show what that would look like from a budget standpoint? If just change the teacher to say, let's
What is
not,
the wage option, teacher wages?
No, it's district-wide.
District-wide wages? Okay, so, but, okay, another.
And I'm not calling it wage, I'm saying logically, it's just a negotiation amount that they can work with.
But another thing I'm thinking, okay, so you cut 16
What?
teachers and
Yeah,
it affects the building beyond that, because then any aides that are with those teachers get cut, and if it's bus run, everything happens, there's a lot of collapsing that happens in a building when they lose teachers. There's lots of things that get cut. And I brought it up before, though, that it's like constantly at the building, and there's no option for anywhere else. It's just building, and
So that brings it back to the question is, what direction do you want the cuts looked at? What options do you want? What areas do you want?
there are no cuts here in this budget, so we're
There are
saying.
no cuts,
there's
and I
no
agree.
cuts.
There should
Which
be.
is
I
awesome.
thought we had, that was the direction we gave.
Totally agree. I think it's a fantastic budget. So what we're saying is that what you're asking for are cuts. If you trade out the math that says we'll keep class sizes the same, and the natural consequence, if we do lose 400 students, and that's an if, is that we would require this fewer teachers. And the idea then is that it hopefully can all be through attrition. That's what we've been able to do for the most part for many years, in fact. But assuming that you want to say, okay, let's say we're going to lose 400 students and keep the same number of teachers, and anybody that retires or chooses to leave the district, that we replace every single one of them rather than allowing attrition, then we have 1.16 million that we have to make up, and the only way to do that is cut. The only way. There's no possibility that you can finesse these numbers and do it some other way. It has to be cuts. So if you're asking for other proposals, what are those cuts?
It's not my job to come up with the cuts, Joan. It's their job. They make the
But
big.
don't
we
want
give them
to.
direction not to
We
do
give them direction
cuts.
not to cut.
That's the direction we gave
we
them.
had asked them.
Okay, the three of you want cuts.
No,
The board
this
doesn't
is,
want-
this,
Don't
John,
put
you're
words in my mouth,
misrepresenting,
please.
yeah.
Look,
Don't ever
John,
put words in my mouth.
last year, I know that I did, and I can't speak for everybody else, that I did ask for additional options next year for the budget. We didn't get that this year. And this budget doesn't reflect, if you let me finish, please, this budget does not reflect any way that we can help to try, and any funding that I see, or maybe Bill and Keith can elaborate on this, any monies that are appropriated to one, fund this bully task force that's going to have recommendations set forth, and two, to hire, and this was my mindset, just from all of the talks that I've had with people, including the intermediate school district and the anti-bully and safety person that is actually on our task force, that social work services, social emotional services are necessary to help combat that. That is not in this budget, is it? Am I wrong?
There's not additional social workers on there. What I was gonna say is there are three options in this budget. When you get down to the net surplus, which originally had been $900,000, and the decision could be made that goes to fund equity, and we do nothing. That's option one. Option two would be that the surplus goes to staff. Option three would be schools of choice, and I know there's not a big appetite on the board for that, but that's a way, one of the only ways we can bring in additional revenue to the school district, and then that revenue would go back to staff as well. That's option three, and then I heard option four, which is that the number of teachers, suggested to match the number of students that are anticipated to not be here next year. That we wouldn't cut all of those. So that would be a fourth option, which would impact, again, some of those things going back. True, I believe it was 2003 that was the first year that school districts everywhere started cutting, and we haven't stopped cutting yet. So to get a budget where we actually came in at $900,000 surplus was amazing news that we normally don't get. Could we allot some of that to additional social workers? We could. I believe, and you guys help me here, that most of the social workers are coming out of 31A or DA18.
I also want to add that we've had this discussion about this, and we do have some Title IV dollars that we will be allocating towards that group, depending on what the needs are. We don't know what the cost is going to be, but we know we have Title IV dollars available for it. I also want to point out too, on your budget books, when you go home in the canary color, you'll have your enrollment there. When we talk about class sizes, our class sizes in 97 and 98, 1997 and 98, they were 24.09 in the elementary. We're 21.15 now. And the middle schools are 24.09 again.
Our numbers are looking better this year. Waterford this year is saying our numbers are looking worse. So there is a problem right there, right? Because
In our neighboring districts, there's some districts that are going more aggressive on school of choice. That's how they're saying their numbers are looking better. So it's,
well, and some and to be fair,
and that's an option that was put out there.
But some communities as well are also, they're having housing booms. Royal Oak, for instance, South Lyon, and that's something that is necessarily outside of our control. But I don't think it's really a debatable point here. We just talked about it at the onset of this meeting, that we're projecting to lose more. To me, that's a problem. There's something wrong there because that's not healthy. We should be going the other way because the numbers are going up, the populations are going up, and people are having more kids. So yes, they are, sir.
But that's why our kindergarten numbers are increasing, but not at the same numbers that our high schools are graduating students. You have to look at the whole dynamic. So yes, it's true. Kindergarten numbers are increasing in Waterford. That's a reflection of those dynamics. So that's a great thing. But they're not catching up to the same pace as where we were at. Well, what would that be? Birth rates are 18-year-olds right now, 18 years ago. So those are the 18-year-olds that are in high school now. We're graduating more than we're bringing in, even though we're bringing in more kindergartners now than we did last year.
And the districts around us are, other than those with growth and construction, adding homes, are not adding children. They're not increasing. Like in the whole county. They are not.
But you did just say earlier at the beginning, you did recognize that we have a problem.
Yes.
Okay, so that's all I'm stating. We have a problem. How are we going to fix it, and how is that reflected in this budget?
I feel the problem is our board. I feel again, that's what I'm hearing again. It's too nice to be saying that. I feel our dysfunction scares people. That's my opinion. And again, there are less people being born today than there were. That's the statistics that we use for the growth. That's the statistics that they use for when we bottom out at the 7,500 mark. That's the numbers. Is it true? We don't know. It's in the future. There is no way of telling them, but that's what they're engaging on. These are our numbers.
I have a question. Help me think about this in my head. We have had a significant student loss for several years, 300, this year, possibly 400. And every time it's teachers and teachers and teachers. And like, so the past 2 years we've done, like from last year, and then if this budget goes, then that's where the reduction is. It's not in any other service entity that serves teachers in the district. That's what I can't get my head around, like how it just stays really, all the service things just stay the same, and
Well,
but the classroom
we've
goes.
cut more in administration than we've cut in teaching
I
staff.
know, we just lost, if we're looking at.
But you're saying that we haven't cut.
See, I was
Hoping
they would answer me,
but I'm going to answer you.
but I'm.
We'll let them answer as well.
No, because you're saying that we've cut teachers and we haven't cut other groups. But if you look at it logically, we've cut percentage-wise more administrators than we have teachers. So we've cut two groups. But I'm not sure what you're
Do you
talking
have that
about.
proof though that you can show us?
Sure.
Okay.
I first want to interject something here too. I think John Paul and Mary and Bob did not have an opportunity to be here when we did do all of the administrative cuts. And when we were in the throes of the deepest part of the Depression, our mantra in all things was we have to hold the classroom sacred. We have to. Everything that we did, the very difficult cuts that we made, that's why at that time that we made percentage-wise significantly more cuts in our central office staff than what we did proportionally to our teaching or any of our other services, because we specifically said, we're at the heart of our budget here, and we have to hold the classroom sacred. So now we're essentially, I understand what you're saying. In the time that you've been on the board, you haven't seen the comparables, but that's because, as I think probably Keith will be able to share based on what you said, that it was significantly out of proportion what we did in our administrative ranks to cut them.
Yeah, I've got data that compares 2002, which was I was talking about when the kind of the start of the cuts, through the 17-18 school year. In 2002-03, we had 11,757 students. That was FTE 17-18, 9,023. That's a 23.25% reduction. Our teachers in that same time span were reduced 23.77, so almost exactly the same. And the administrators were reduced 38.46%. So it was considerably higher. And then there was also I don't have this, but I'll just anecdotally, in terms of pay, administrative pay was also decreased. So people that are in the same job as folks were, how many years ago, is this maybe 8 years ago, something like that? Is that the comparison? 10 years, are making less than the people were at that time. A lot of the administrators that I talk to, and they talk about their retirement, and your retirement is based on your best 3 years of salary. Those were in the early 2000s, not in the teens. So so they've continually over time lost compensation as well. So it's been happening from both angles, from the number of administrative positions that there are and from the pay that those folks get. And they have not been treated the same. I think it was 2 years ago when the instructional staff received a raise that the administrative staff did not receive. So it was just given to that one group. So my concern administratively, because I was asking, because I know 5 of these happened since I've been here, and this is year 3. And since I've been here, Jan McCartan went on to private industry. Steve Garrison went to a different school district. Jeff Frankowiak went to a different school district. Karen Gomez went to a different school district. Kim Pinchek went to a different school district. Before I got here, Lynn Kaczynski went to private industry. Bob Brady went to a different district. Josh Wenning went to a different district, and Matt Landry went to a different district. So we've had 9 administrators, 5 recently, that have seen greener pastures elsewhere. And my concern is we're actually doing quite well as a school district. You had the presentation last week with the, the incredible increases, NWEA. You look at the finances, I mean, to be able to have a budget that comes in with a surplus is amazing financial management, and to keep that above the state minimums. My concern is that we're gonna start losing the folks that are making all those good things happen. And then we've got another problem on our hands, is the people that were able to turn the direction in the right, go in the right way, aren't gonna be here to do that anymore.
And I think there's just a philosophical difference, which I respect, because my personal thought is the people that make the good things happen are the teachers, are the bus drivers, are the teaching aides, but you see it as the administrators, right?
I see it as a continuum. You're right. I mean, the people with the boots on the ground are making it happen, but there's somebody that's directing that effort and getting us consistent across all classrooms, and that it is from the administrative level.
And I can appreciate that. I see it differently though. But my second point is, when you talk about the salary and where the standstill, the salaries, or the stagnation of the salaries, I work in public sector, and that's emblematic of all public sector. I don't make much more now if you compare my position to somebody who was working in that position in 2002 and 2003. This has just been the reality of coming out of this horrid, great recession that we had in 2008 and 2009. So when you state that they are still looking at the same wages, or their best 3 years were in the early 2000s, that's everybody. That's probably most of the people in this room would tell you the same thing. And so I'm just bringing it from a different perspective. I'm not trying to be difficult, not trying to be disrespectful. I come from a very working class background, and the way I have always seen it is those people on the bottom who are making the hourly wages are the people that we should really be trying to make sure that we're keeping. Because those bus drivers, those teaching aides, those teachers, they're the ones that are the ground troops. They're the ones that are having the day-to-day interactions with the kids, right? Though the administrators are at the top and they're talking about, moving it down the chain and giving the direction, you gotta look at those people who are that day-to-day interaction with those kids. So when I look at this budget, and I'm not for cuts. I don't want people to get cut. I'm just asking that we have some different options here, because we're presented with that this is what we're gonna do, and the wages are gonna stay the same, but there's no thinking outside the box. And I think that's a term that we use a lot in our board meetings when our students come and they present at the beginning of our board meetings. We always tell them, think outside the box, challenge, ask questions. And I just ask that we do that as a board, that we reflect that philosophy in our own board policies and when we present budgets, because I think what's frustrating to myself is, and I can't speak for other board members, but at least for myself, is that I asked last year for options for next year, and there's no options here.
There aren't, you give us 3 options.
There's 4.
No.
Explain
You
again.
just outlined them for us, John.
First of all, I won't get on my soapbox till the day people kick me out of this district. We have for many years tried to treat every employee, from bus drivers, secretaries, social workers, up to administration. We've tried to treat them all fairly and equally. That means when we give someone a raise at the top, we give that same person at the bottom. Or the same person at the bottom gets a raise, we give the same at the top. Why we're picking on some principals that they think they're overpaid, that's the market. But to treat them differently when
We're talking about equitable pay, and I'm not.
Okay, I understand that you think administrators in the public school systems are
John, can you
overpaid.
just
I
calm
understand.
down?
No, because I can't believe that of all years we're fighting over a budget where we've cut off left, right,
That you're
All
upset
right,
that we didn't bring a budget where we're cutting administrators.
We're finally giving back to employees.
We're talking about equitable pay, it's just the questions
Well,
are
but we
being asked.
benchmark, we
Well,
benchmark,
well,
it is equitable.
but-
He already told you what they're
but-
making as
and-
compared to the five.
And thankfully, I got those answers tonight, right? I wouldn't have known if I hadn't asked.
But you would know,
But I
because
couldn't
we
get-
talked about it several times.
I couldn't give those
Cheryl.
answers until I had you guys stop interrupting and Keith would answer the question.
Well,
Am I wrong?
here's where you're wrong. Here's where you're wrong, John Paul. You're coming to this, I know Mr. Piggott has asked, I just want to see options. It's not my job, I want to see options. You have 4 options there, but I've heard nothing specific about options other than to cut administrators. To cut administrators, you have data that tells you they've already been cut disproportionately to teachers. They've already been cut in pay disproportionately to other staff members. They have not been part of the Me Too in all instances, which is something that we've always tried to do in this district. And that compared to all of our surrounding districts, they are the lowest paid. We have to be competitive if we want to retain the brightest and best.
They're not
That
the
goes
lowest
for-
paid.
Wait, I was just gonna say, is that a fact?
Keith said it was average.
You asked for the assistant superintendent, we're the lowest in that one. High school is in the middle of the 5, middle school's in the middle of the 5, elementary is 2,000 from the bottom.
Collectively, are we in the middle? You're looking at the
We're either
information.
in the middle or below in each one of those administrative categories that I collected.
So I really just am trying to understand, are you advocating, with this budget, the choice that you wanted to see was to reduce administrative costs?
I didn't say that, so.
I'm just asking.
Yeah, no,
That's
I
all
didn't
I've
say
heard
that.
in terms of suggestions. That's the only suggestion I've heard, that you would like to see a cut.
Well, where else could we,
That's why I'm
Yeah.
asking, why
What are
do
the
we
other
have
What
to
other
cut?
options are there?
Why do we have to cut? We have a budget in front of you that
because
doesn't
I would
cut.
like teachers to make more money.
So would I. That's why we want to give them this money and not change not retain teachers that don't match our current class
Over the
sizes.
long term, not just a year.
Over the long term, we have a plan in place. We have a systemic budget that will continue. If you listen to Bill, he said next year our fund balance would be increased by the end of the 2019 school year based on the systemic budget. It's a year-to-year concern that we continue to look at. We've built from almost 1.4 million to this over a very short amount of time, which should tell you, based on the very difficult position that we were in, we were able to do that we have some room to continue to do that, but not on the backs of our staff. Just not on the backs of our staff, not any of them. They have taken it for too long and we're done. And for the first time, we have a budget that doesn't cut. It does not cut. And you're wanting us to have options that says we are gonna cut.
No, I'm
Please,
one-
you keep putting
Yeah,
that
you
in my
keep
mouth, and that's not
But
true.
there's no other way to do it other than
There's
what.
no other way. There's no other options. You know
We're
that for a
speak for the
fact.
district.
Here's what I'm telling you. We are 85%. Tell me what you would do here that wouldn't involve a cut. Tell me where you're gonna not involve a cut, to increase either fund balance or to
No,
add
this is
the
not
addition.
my.
But you're a board member and you're weighing in, so what could we possibly do that wouldn't be a cut? How would it not be a cut? Any change to this is gonna result in a cut.
well, go ahead.
I mean, that's why the revenue option is in there, because that school of choice is a way to raise revenue. It's one of our only opportunities to raise revenue, and I know it's not popular, but that's why I wanted it on there as an option, so it is something that we could discuss, and it's a way to get money, and one of the things that we have to consider is when we give, like the raises that were given last year are they're forever. You know, that's in the, it wasn't a one-shot deal, so everybody went up to another level, and now we're talking about giving raises from there. So each one of those levels of raises has to be built back into our budget. So really what they're not patting themselves on the back for, and they should be, is that they absorbed all of that last year's raises and now are able to talk about what else we could do now on top of that. So we haven't had that discussion in Waterford. You tell me, Bill, when was the last time that you did that 2 years in a row?
Right.
To be able to have an increase 2 years in a row. But from, my fear is, our one and only revenue is kids. And schools of choice would help us close the gap. It would help us raise some class sizes so we don't have to wait for our kindergarten classes to catch up, and get into 12th grade at the, whatever you said, 7,400 number, 7,500 number, whatever that was that you said. It's a way to increase that. The last group of 100 students that we brought in a couple years ago, we studied them and we looked twice at grades, behavior problems, and attendance. Their grade, on average as a whole, their grades exceeded the Waterford average. Their behavior problems were fewer than the Waterford average. Their attendance was worse. That's true. But in behavior and scores, grades, they did well. So they're not, students that we don't want to have in the school district, and it would help revenue. So every time that we build in something like that wage option, you've got almost 1.5 million in there as a wage option. That stays in forever. And we've got to figure out a way next year to absorb that and to come back to you with, another increase maybe, or here's where we are, or an increased fund balance, all of those kinds of things. So, I prefer, in terms of options, to look at how do we raise revenue, because that is the answer to the question, if not cuts, what? That's the answer. And there are many other ways to do that. We tried the virtual school business, and that ended up costing us money, not making us money. And so we use open schools now. We've tried some other revenue generating things that haven't always worked, and so we've moved away from that. But I like looking at generating revenue.
So on this budget, we would take 100 student schools of choice, and if we decided as a board we didn't want to, we'd have to come up with 788,000.
Or it changes your negotiations reserve. I mean, that's the discussion, because that 788 goes directly to the negotiations reserve. But that's
what I'm saying.
Go back to staff.
That's what's bothering me right now. This is set up to me, like if we don't accept what this is, then we don't give teachers raises. Where I'm thinking,
it just would be a difference in percentage.
But why can't 788 come from a cut somewhere else? We're not even given options.
Where do you want to
Revenue
cut? That's what we're asking.
I don't know. That's what the budgetary guy could look at and.
No, what we're telling them not to cut. My sense of the majority of the board's telling them not to cut. You guys, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but you just used the word cut. So what area do you think they should look at to cut?
I'm just saying, right now, the way this is set up, it's like, that's the impression that if we didn't do one of these things, then it's gonna go into negotiation reserve.
Well, I mean, I think we could have numbered these things, option 1, 2, 3. I mean, that's just an option. That isn't something that we have to do there. It is something that we did a couple of years ago, and it worked out well for the students and for the school district. But it isn't something that we would have to do. That's just an option that we're here to discuss. Does it impact other numbers? Yeah, all of the options would impact other numbers, but there still is money without that either could or could not, again, depending on the discussion, go back to staff for raises.
And this 100 students, this would be similar to the one that we did before. If we had a kid that come in that started in kindergarten, now he has siblings that are in 3rd or 4th grade, them siblings could not come to our school because they didn't come in kindergarten.
Correct, and the law does allow us to give preference to siblings.
Okay, so that's this 100 students. We would have it. I believe we were expecting 50 kids last time, and we opened up to 100 because of basically.
Started with 30, I think, and we ended up at 100.
We had about 175 applications for those 100 spots. So we did do a lottery, and so there were some there. And we do know that there's people that
took siblings beforehand.
We took siblings. And we were specifically targeting kids who had lived in Waterford and moved out. And I think each one of the board members, if I'm not mistaken, I think we all recently got an email from one of our social workers with a specific example of a student who, because of their home situation, they can't afford to live in Waterford anymore. And the social worker was, pleading with us to come up with an option for that student to be able to stay. And right now, we have no option for those students to stay at kindergarten, or if they meet the criteria to be in STEM at high school, is the only way that we, for this year, that we've approved for students to come in that weren't residents.
Because I was already spending that 1.4, not realizing that it's, thought of it as of kids that we have to bring in. So,
Correct.
Or, no.
Well, there's a
Well, yes,
population
right.
that is currently today on Waterford students that moves out, they're not eligible. for
Right,
that.
right, but again, I mean, I think that should be some of our discussion then is, because again, we've always talked about if we bring kids in, it pushes other kids out.
Right, yeah, you take that net surplus that's on line 23 there, and you're adding that to line 32, does that still add up? To 1.45, because you changed some of that, so it's still.
I'm not sure what you're talking about, but I.
Well, you,
I mean,
line 23,
okay,
I mean, I thought
We're at
1.45 was the
5.48
net surplus
doing
plus the
this.
schools of choice minus the.
Yeah, you're at
right,
488.
Right,
Yeah.
because we gotta take out the expense, there's
The one
expense.
point 54 hasn't been adjusted though. That doesn't add up. I don't think the 1.45 is an actual calculation.
Because the 788, that has expenses associated with it though, so the 788 is actually 528. So yeah, it does, you're right, it doesn't add up, right?
Just a quick, to just go off this a little bit, just 'cause I'm curious. Regarding school of choice, if you have a child who lives here in Waterford, they go kindergarten, first, second, third, they then move to Walled Lake and they want to stay, they can,
Correct.
right? But if a kid lives in Walled Lake and starts in kindergarten, school of choice, they basically, they are now Waterford students. So even though they're living in Walled Lake, they can go here.
Okay, let me see if I understand
Right.
what you said.
Maybe I could
If they live in Walled Lake,
Yep,
and they came school of choice in kindergarten,
Right.
they can go all the way.
because they're officially
Yeah.
considered, they're our kids.
Yeah, okay, that's what you're saying, yeah, that's
Yep.
true.
Now, if they move from Walled Lake to Highland, they can still stay.
Or if they're from Waterford and they move to Walled Lake,
As long as they never leave the district.
Right,
Yeah, that's
they
right.
can stay, but if they live in Waterford for 5 years, then they move to Walled Lake, they can no longer go here.
Right,
Even though
right.
there's other kids in Walled Lake going here, because they started in kindergarten, they can stay here, but the other kid who started in kindergarten, who moved, they can't come here.
You are correct.
And that's not our rule, that's a
No.
state rule.
Well, it's how we choose.
We're not school of choice,
Right.
but could, if the other district, if they move to Walled Lake, if Walled Lake said, we'll release that child, even though we're not school of choice for 5th grade,
Right.
could they then stay here?
Yes.
But they never will.
Well, it depends on the school district, quite frankly. There's some that don't. The unfortunate part is, like in the case of the letter that you received from the social worker, that student's going to Pontiac. Pontiac won't touch that.
Right.
So they're not going to release. There's other school districts that we have a reciprocal relationship with, and so we'll do that for each other. And, so we don't mind doing that. But Pontiac will not do that. They will never release a student.
So if the two districts agree, they could move out and still continue to go here. It's not so much a state rule, it's if the two districts agree, they can stay.
Yeah, on the release is a separate thing from school of choice.
Gotcha.
Under school of choice law, and this 100 is, there's unlimited, which we have at kindergarten. This would be limited schools of choice. And so what that means is, and somebody asked this the other day at a meeting where I was, Donaldson Hills, for example, is really full. We've got 560 or something like that. We got a lot of kids in Donaldson Hills. I'm not going to open that up as an option for school of choice. I'm going to go, to like a Knutson that's got open classroom. And that's where, school of choice kids. And so we're allowed to do that in limited schools of choices. We say, this is where our openings are, and this is where we can take you. We don't have to just say, oh my gosh, now we've got, 80, new 3rd graders. If we don't have those slots available, we don't have to open them up. So the nice thing about it is, even though, Bill and Danielle, have put in, FTE for the expense, there is a possibility, because of what we're allowed to do under limited schools of choice, that we can just fit kids into open seats, not have to create whole new classrooms for kids that are coming to us. So again, it's an option, and that number 100 isn't a magic number, it's just what we did before. That can change either direction as well if you want to adjust the revenue that goes with that.
It gives me more money to spend.
You can go higher or lower, that is totally up to us. And then there's certain windows that you can only be open for, that the state allows you. So, there are certain rules we have to follow, but in terms of the number, even if it's limited, the number can be larger or smaller than that.
So I think that's part of our discussion, is I'd like to have more money, and that's how I get it, that's an option, so I'd like to bring in 100 kids.
Well, and what John said is true, is we do, every year we have, fairly decent amount, 30 or so that are moving out that would like to stay, and we have no provision for that. We do even have students who came in school of choice, and then they moved someplace because of a job or something, away from our area, and then they came back to our area, we can't let them back in. Even though they used to be here schools of choice, because they went someplace else, we can't let them back in. And we really don't have a mechanism to let kids stay in Waterford who've left. Unless we do this.
This gives us that option. It sounds like a win-win.
Well,
It gives you that option,
we know
and
the
up
kids.
to 800.
We know the kids, and then the other caveat to that too is behavior. That we get to do a behavior review on school of choice kids. And, if they've had, suspensions, expulsions, we don't have to accept them. So if there is a student who was here and they moved out and was a student who was getting in trouble all the time, we don't have to take them as a school of choice kid, even though they were a Waterford kid. So we have that ability under school of choice to, weed out behavior problems.
Keith,
We can only,
does that include also, I know for STEM, right? We do school of choice, correct?
Right, yes, and that would not, right now, we have a separate 20 seats for STEM. So this would have to be, when we get to that point, we would have to talk about,
We didn't fill that last year.
no, we only had 5, and it's hard. I mean, we're talking about kids changing when they're, at high school level, and it's hard for kids to do. But it's a great program, and those kids, again, that was limited schools of choice into a specific program, so we could apply the program criteria to those students, so they had to meet academic criteria as well. I can't do that if we're just saying.
And I assume it's a pretty small number. Out of those 9,000, how many kids are non-Waterford School District residents?
If you're asking how many are school of choice, I can answer that one. It's a little over 400.
400?
Yeah. All K-12, all
Right.
right. So kids that started as kindergartners and matriculated through the system. You may have some other kids who are kids of staff, and that's allowed through a different caveat
Right.
of the
Yep.
law.
Yep.
But of the real life schools of choice like this, it's a little over 400.
400.
So with a loss of 400 kids, let's say that actually happened, we're gonna lose the teachers. We would also lose teacher assistants. I'm just processing, correct? Because there would be classes for them.
Maybe not. It depends on the funding mechanism behind those teacher assistants. And most of the teacher assistants aren't full-time in classrooms at the kindergarten level. They are, but that's where we're gaining kids. So I don't know if that would be true in every case.
And then I'm just kind of thinking out, so would it be less bus runs, so less food to make, so it affects every department.
Trickle down.
Like,
I
I'm asking if that's.
It could, as you know, as somebody who's scheduled in elementary schools, it usually doesn't work out that well. And so just, even if you lost 5 kids at a certain grade level, that doesn't mean that you can then consolidate classes. So we have to look at it specifically with the roll-up of numbers and where we think kids are going to be, to see, how that would work out. So, sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't. There may be a possibility if you're, whatever number we were at, 'cause I think we had 3 different numbers there now, 12, 14, and 16. So whatever that number of teachers is, we may not be able to schedule it that way. So it may not be possible to even do that. So it's something that would, this is a theoretical, this is how things might work out. In reality, that scheduling may not work out that way. And those associated things, like just because 2 kids aren't on a bus route doesn't mean we can consolidate a bus route. We'd have to look at that really closely to see, where did we lose those kids from, and would that be possible?
Right, and then, I was just going to think of something.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think you budgeted loss of teacher assistants into that number, did you? No, so that's not budgeted in there. Yeah, and quite frankly, most of the time we're looking for teacher assistants, so my guess is that we would keep all the teacher assistants we had.
Regarding the enrollment drop, 300 is what we were at. We raised it to 50 more based on the negative media coverage we had. A few board members think it should be at another 50 due to this board. Out of the 300, do we look at that and analyze that and say, where is this 300? Where are we losing the 3? And I know I've said it a lot of times, it's not always about losing kids. They're not, all 300 aren't going other places. It's less kids being born, different things. But do we look at that 300 and analyze it and say, okay, we're down this many because of the birth rate. We're down this many because of this or that, and any of those things that we can maybe try to fix, get into that, I guess that's one of my big things is I'm tired of seeing losing kids.
Right. The biggest chunk of them is the difference between exiting students and incoming students. And so, like I said earlier, and I don't have those exact numbers with me, but our graduating classes with, the 3 high schools it's in the 800s combined. Our incoming kindergartners are in the mid 600s. And that number's been going up from the low 600s now to the mid 600s. So that's about 200 of it right there. And so that is a problem. There are also, at Stepanski, there are kids who we get to count because they're in programs that can count, some special ed programs there that aren't Waterford residents, and, after they're done with the preschool programs, go back to their home district, so we lose some there. I looked specifically, it was last year, at those numbers, and I think the actual students that you could say we really did lose, that walked away somehow, was only around 35. So it was, and you look at a number like 300, and people are, oh my gosh, so many people are leaving. But it's mainly the gap. And so 2 things with that. Junior kindergarten helps us considerably. A year ago, we had 3 junior kindergarten classes. This year, we have 4 junior kindergarten classes. Enrollment is pretty strong right there. So, I think we're thinking at least 4 right now, and it would be great if we could add an additional section. That helps us close the gap because their kindergartners, the junior kindergartners are considered kindergarten according to the count this year, and then next year they are in kindergarten again. And so that helps those numbers as well and helps close that gap. And then, the school of choice would help that too because they're going to be spread, throughout. And again, whatever grade levels the board, decides to choose in there, they would be spread throughout that, which would, I think, help greatly, increase some of the numbers and those in-between class sizes, so we don't have to wait for kindergarten to catch up to seniors.
I remember my question. You had talked about kindergarten classes are increasing. How much more how many more?
In the last 2 years, I think about maybe 50 in the incoming students, and then we've been able to increase that also through additionally through the junior kindergarten. This is only the first year, this is only the first year, the first class of junior kindergartners would have been in kindergarten.
So
So
last,
it's
so
the first
last
year.
year, we have 50 more kindergartners than we did last year. Right?
Approximately, I didn't bring that
I
stuff
know,
with me,
just
so I
about,
was guessing.
okay, I just wanted to comment.
Yeah, it's not triple digits, it's double digits.
Okay, so 12th grade's a long way away. How many more years of the gap do we have?
Yeah, a lot.
So we're gonna, so like next year we'll have a loss too, and
Yeah, I
Next
mean,
year we'll have a lot
the
of
demographic folks that are looking at that, and I also, I went to the Oakland County Economic Summit today, and there were the researchers who were there talking about Oakland County, still say that, county-wide, and yes, there's exceptions like South Lyon, but county-wide, birth rates are down, the K-12 population continues to go down, and that employment within the education sector remains flat. So their outlook, now they're only looking out maybe 3 years, but their outlook for education the next 3 years is about the same. That there's no huge influx of people, with the exception of those places who are newer communities, and then that hurts us as well, because those newer communities, sometimes people move out of the older communities to move into the newer communities, and we lose kids that way. So, but yeah, no, it's gonna take a while. I don't know how far out our demographers go.
I was gonna ask.
5 years or something like that. About 5 years.
So at least for 5 more years.
We're still looking at a downturn for 5 years.
Okay, so,
Okay, and just, it was, Rob New was here when we heard that study and stuff, that it was around 7,500 is what they expect us to bottom out to. This was the long term, that's when everything, that was probably 8 or 10, when that had kind of come out and gave us a number, we knew we were going down. And started making the adjustments accordingly.
So I think I had asked this at a previous board meeting about when's the threshold, if we keep, this budget just takes the reduction of teachers, like takes most of the money from the reduction of teachers and then adding schools of choice. I see that's how we're getting to a very, very scary fund balance that we're still not high enough there. But when's the threshold of when cuts happen in other places? I mean, like I said, and when we were building principals, you knew if you went under 300 back when there were more elementaries, you knew if your numbers went down to 300, you were in that threshold of possibly closing. You know that if your teacher's classroom goes down to 19, you're gonna be told you have to have a split. So there's always a number that's a threshold, but that's where I'm not seeing the balance here. We just keep losing students, and then not replacing teachers.
Yeah.
And where's the balance?
I think the answer to that question right now is that we aren't there yet, because if you look at our smaller elementaries, which are in the lower 300s, we don't have any place to put that many kids. And in the infinite wisdom of the state, they won't allow us, even though we've got bond money here, they won't allow us to add classroom space. Yes, we did at Donaldson, but we did it inside the building. They won't allow us to add, say, a wing where we might be able to accommodate kids and then, save some of the, overhead costs. We're not allowed to do that per the state. Because, I see what, I know what you're saying with that, but right now we don't have that. So, is there a magic number? There probably is. We're not anywhere close to that yet to be able to even start thinking about the what ifs. The one place that's the exception to that would be Waterford Village, and we've got 5 Great Start Readiness programs there, and Michigan Works, and the 5 Great Start Readiness programs are slated to move to Leggett in August, September, something like that, and then we are slated in the spring to stop our relationship with Michigan Works. And so then that would be a surplus building. We don't have principal there. I mean, there's certain things that, but there's still gonna be savings in not having that.
Getting back to the student numbers, and I think that we all agree that we're losing students, obviously, other school districts are losing the third grade challenge, kindergarten, 12th grade. But we do identify that we have lost a disproportional amount of students this year. So it just brings me back to my question I was asking earlier. Okay, how do we work with this budget to combat that issue? In my opinion, it is that a lot to do with the bullying issue that came about over the past month and a half, the media coverage on it, and that's why we established where we're presenting on losing those students, and we're having this conversation, but we are going the wrong way. I think that's pretty obvious. So how do we fix that?
Okay, well, first off, the 400 is, a guess. It's.
And hopefully it doesn't happen.
Exactly.
But the 300 was the educated guess.
The 300 was the one that the demographic, if everything stayed the same, we were just thinking, you're right, that issue, might impact people and have them make different decisions about the school district. Bill had mentioned something that I forgot about, which is the Title IV money that he has allocated some money into with just the name, anti-bullying. We're not really sure. We'll wait for the task force to tell us, how that should be directed. And social workers, and I think are they all, every single one of them 31A?
Oh, no, you have your special ed social workers, we have to put it in 31A, and reallocate those social workers to this budget.
Right, so either that and also we could look at our 31A funds, which we get to use for, additional student needs, and that's something we could definitely look at. How are we allocating those? There would be a different way to reallocate that. So I mean, we're not seeing here, every single line item goes into these bottom lines here for each one of these things. So I agree. I don't know exactly which way the task force might go on a recommendation, but I do think we already have some things in place that could help at least a little bit with social workers. Would that be another one for every single school? I don't think it's quite that much money. That we'd be talking about, quite a bit of money, but maybe there's enough for, like a special social work task force that, goes towards, maybe is available to all buildings that they can call on that specializes in anti-bullying techniques and comes in kind of like a SWAT team of social workers to deal with some specific problems as they arise in buildings. We might be able to fund that. Again, I don't want to speak for the task force because I'm not sure, where that might go, but, could we accommodate something like that? I think we could.
Not to put you on the spot here, but could you kind of ballpark about what we could be looking at spending or investing into task force needs or potentially social workers if we didn't? This is all part of the discussion. We had our task force meeting a couple of days ago, and the general consensus that I got from parents that I talked to, and I talked to several after, was that, and after hearing Julie McDaniels, the PhD from Oakland Schools, talk about it, a lot of it has to do with social emotional needs and working with the parents. They will provide a lot of resources. Oakland Schools has a number of resources that they will provide for us. They say for free, but it is our tax dollar money. So we will get those resources. But and this is just me inserting my background in criminal justice and social work, that this is one of the prevalent things that we do see, is that having those therapeutic needs of the child and for the family of that matter being met. And one of the things that we're charged with providing an education for students, but we're also charged with providing a safe environment for the students. So like it or not, we have that responsibility. I just want to make sure that we are actually meeting that and we're setting aside an allocation of dollars for it. Would you have any idea if we, and maybe that's not a fair question.
Well, I mean,
we don't know where we're going with it.
I look at the line item that those got highlighted right there. It just happens to be highlighted at $260,000 for FTE that would be for additional schools of choice. So, you're using the number 65,000 to, as just that's kind of just a general number that would include salary and benefits. And so, again, depending on which way the task force goes, are you talking, one social worker, a team of social workers, what is it? So that would be, based off of that number, starting at a low of $65,000 if you wanted to add a social worker. Do we have to do that with general fund dollars? Not necessarily. Are there people, possibly already in the school district that might be able to take that on or would want to? I got some emails after that meeting from some staff that was there that were really excited and really want to be, heavily involved in this. And so, I think there's definitely some possibilities. What I don't want to do, especially from my seat, is to make it look like I'm dictating what I think the task force ought to come up with as the solution to that. So I do want this to come from the task force rather than me, but could we do that? Yes, and that would be a good approximation, starting with that, dollar amount per, teacher, which would fall into the same, price category as a social worker of the $65,000.
I'm gonna do a little history. I think it's my role to have sit here for way too long. I wanna start with Bob. What are your options? In this whole school, number of children, students, we're all trying to keep our own kids, right? It's very difficult to attract kids from other districts, so we're all trying. So we have tried. We said, well, let's go to all-day kindergarten. We kept those kids. Okay, the neighboring district scrambled and said, okay, now I have to do all-day kindergarten because Waterford just did all-day kindergarten. We said, let's do junior kindergarten. Now everybody's going to junior kindergarten. So it's basically, you're chasing something. Some districts, you read in the paper now, have said, I'll go after private funds. I'll go to private schools and I'll be the instructor and I'll be your per pupil. And now the state's caught on, and there's districts in Oakland County, according to the paper, who are saying, if you take that away from me, we're going bankrupt as a district. So I hate for us to overextend ourselves on options. We make very hard cuts. Part of that was, when I got on this board, our elementary buildings would have 200 kids each. Clearly, we had to shrink the building population. The administration came to this, I'll say this board, the board that was in place, that said, you need to look at how, you need to make a plan how you're gonna do this. So we came up with the 300. If your population is above or below 300, that decides where we first start looking at buildings to close. Okay, we recently just added a full-time social worker in every building. Okay, I'm not ready to jump on any task force answer saying this is the solution. I think Keith, as a superintendent, is telling us that he understands that there's all these balls in the air. He needs to create a budget that no matter what comes out of the blue, whether it's funding to help answer the bullying problem or to help answer the problem that pops up next year that we don't know about, that it's somewhere in a budget that we can handle. And that's his role. So I'm still going back to, and I got a quarter bet that we finish by 8 tonight, but that this board is not directing the district administration to make cuts. So,
Just bring it back to, you mentioned about the kindergarten, all-day kindergarten. I hear from a lot of parents, I have a little 4-year-old who's in preschool. A lot of parents that would ask me quite often why we don't have all-day preschool, and it's something that I, just throwing out there. I've looked at other districts, they do have that, and does, based off your expertise, is that something that could make us more desirable if we had? Because I hear it, but in what I'm hearing is coming from parents who would love that here in Waterford schools. All their kids live in Waterford, they have kids in Waterford schools. The preschool is here in Waterford, but Waterford does not have an all-day preschool program. We have different half-day programs, but for working families, that doesn't work.
We have all-day Head Start, and I believe this was the first. Was this the first year or was it the last year? 2 years. Okay, so 2 years. And it's good and bad. I think we all know that the more preschool a student has, the better they're going to be, in elementary. they'll have a great start there. The problem with it was mandated, so everybody has full day Head Start. And they didn't change the allocation, I guess it was the money allocation behind it. So we want you to go to full-time and use the same budget, which means half of the kids got kicked out of Head Start. Because we used to have half-day programs and could use the same teacher in the morning as we use in the afternoon, and now that teacher just has that morning group of kids all day, so the afternoon kids don't have a class anymore. And so that's part of the issue, because we have several different funding sources at Stefanski, Head Start being one of them, GSRP being one of them. There's tuition-based programs, there's several other programs. And so there are certain stipulations that we have to follow. But definitely, I mean, if you're talking tuition-based families, I think whatever the demand is, will meet the demand. On the government-run programs, we have to follow what the government says are the guidelines for those programs. Even when, in the case of Head Start, we were upset about that because essentially it was cutting the number of kids we could serve in half. We didn't think that made a whole lot of sense. But we had to do it because that was the mandate.
Do we have the space to add?
Stefanski is full.
Yeah, Stefanski, and so that's why, I mean, we're looking at Leggett, we're adding those 5 GSRP that pretty much uses up the free space that we have at Leggett right at this point. So yeah.
We're looking at adding more.
Well, we have some other, I mean, again, we do have a classroom or maybe even 2 at Knudsen that might be a possibility. So I think there are some possibilities. We'll definitely look at that. I don't know if that would impact this as much though, it'd be more something within the preschool.
And even if it was something to the effect of, what I hear a lot is that, if Waterford had all day kindergarten, and what we know is that when we get them early on, we keep them, right? So it works in a way as though it's essentially a way that we're keeping Waterford students, or keeping Waterford students. And then to the effect of, even if it was a tuition-based program, because a lot of the programs that we do have, they're for families that, a lot of the families at my daughter's preschool, they're not going to qualify for that. It's usually low-income Head Start. I think the other program is based off of an income bracket. So
yeah, or GSRP is pretty high though. I think GSRP was
62,000 for 4 families or something, I think is what somebody told me. So if there is a way that we could, in some way, if it is feasible, provide some kind of all-day preschool program that was tuition-based, that could be at a lower rate than maybe what other preschool centers are offering, I would think we would actually get students.
And just a follow-up question, when we create preschool classes, can we say we're only taking Waterford people first?
Yeah,
We just
because
got
that
beat up
does seem to be a
by
huge.
half the county saying, you're closing my program, you only live in Waterford. Is there a way that we can set a preschool where you have to live in Waterford to get first choice?
I believe so.
Because, I mean, otherwise we defeat ourselves, right?
You don't get enough.
John Paul, if we make a lower price point, everyone from the county is gonna come around and fill our seats. We're not getting Waterford people in.
Well, I mean, if we could have that contingency, I think that would be a great idea, just based off of the interactions that I have with families on a day-to-day basis. They all know I'm on the school board. They ask me, hey, they're doing it in Troy, they're doing it in these other school districts, why aren't we doing it? And in general consensus that I get is they'd be willing to pay still, as long as if it was a little bit less, and in many instances it's more convenient because they already have kids in the Waterford schools.
Right. I took note of that.
Do we not do that now with the preschool? I mean, can a kid from Troy go here before a Waterford kid?
That's what those parents got up and said.
Really?
Tuition-based,
That
yeah.
80% of the people are.
So, and so there's Waterford kids that can't get in, but yet kids, why aren't we changing that like now? Like literally change that tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Honestly, I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying that's ridiculous. Waterford should come first.
I agree with you.
I'm one, but boy, I'd say that, I think
Where
we'd
where
be
are we
support
with
for it.
the, and the 100 kids or up to 100 kids for the other kids? I think that's something we need to do. We haven't really spoken a whole lot about that. I mean, are people in favor of that or opposed to that? It's a
I would
revenue source.
support it.
I mean, we need, four people to kind of give them direction to,
I would add that we actually open up some slots for our advanced achievement academy as well, like we do for the STEM. I don't know if
Would
we
that
did.
be, would you want to see that
In part of that
included,
seven,
or would you
in
want to
part
see
of
that in
100.
addition?
I would say in addition, so if we don't offer it now, we have 20 spaces for STEM,
Right.
right? We're getting very high caliber good kids, and we're providing them an opportunity to go on to higher education. The same thing should hold true for the advanced, academy program, where we have good students who are committing to, 100+ hours of community service, are all taking advanced courses. These are good kids.
Right, and I think that it would make it more palatable for some people who are just generally against schools of choice to know the criteria that they would have to meet to be part of that. I think that's why, the STEM was pretty easy to accept, because, they had to meet the same criteria Waterford kids, had to meet, which was, a high criteria to get in there. So I see that. I think that might, opening up to that program might take away some fear that people associate with school of choice.
Is there any possibility in that program, I would think a student that goes in and signs up for AP classes so they can meet that criteria and then they immediately drop and schedule alternately, that would certainly be a backdoor way to.
We would have to put that in the contract, I think, yeah.
I think too, with AP classes, don't you have to get teacher approval before you even sign up for it? So I don't think they could unless, you'd have to see some type of a background of their transcript to,
Right.
I mean, you're not gonna get a kid who's all E's be able to sign up for an AP.
Yeah,
class.
and that's where we're kind of at a disadvantage with the STEM too. We're not looking at as much criteria as we do for Waterford kids, because that teacher recommendation for Waterford kids is huge into STEM. And we don't get that for the school of choice kids, so we have to look at strictly, their academic record.
Can you look at discipline records for any incoming school of choice candidate?
Yep.
and again, making it basically, where we have those slots. You're gonna know towards the,
Yes.
before the season starts and when we're putting it out there, you're gonna know where we have openings. You have that building with 19 elementary kids in a class, targeting those kids and that,
Right, and kind of going back to what, John was just saying, about the 300 threshold, if we've got a building that's getting close to that, maybe that's a building that accepts more school of choice kids, so it helps them stay open. They'll have the space to be able to do that, whereas Donaldson Hills, I don't want to add anybody to Donaldson, I have enough people living around it to fill that building up, put another roof on that.
I would like to give the administration some show.
Can I ask one more
support.
question? Yep, I just, as you know, Rob, I struggle with this
I know you
a
do.
great deal.
You always have.
I always have, since day one. So at least I'm consistent. I think I asked if we can look at their academic records. It does us no good to look at their academic records,
Yes, you're right.
because we can't discriminate based on grades or anything else. What I meant to ask is their discipline.
Yeah, no, you said that.
I did, okay,
Yes, yeah.
so if they've been expelled or suspended, those are the two criteria. A suspension, so even one suspension we could use as a criteria for not accepting a school of choice, or is it much more rigorous than that?
I think it's more rigorous than that. I'm not sure exactly the one that, but certainly
It's
expulsion is.
There's gonna be it depends on there, it's
Yeah.
gonna depend on what was that suspension for.
Okay,
And, sometimes it may appear as like an incident, and that may only look like it's one, but if it was a 10-day suspension for a fight,
Right.
that would be a no. So, we have to really look at it individually, and so we do request those behavior records, and we do look at them very closely. And so, a one incident could be a no, it could be a yes. It's gonna be very individualized depending on why they were suspended.
and so here's
my naysayer in me. Is it possible that districts would choose not to send full behavior records or could in the hopes that we'll take the student that they no longer want?
They're in the state's database, and that's where we can pull that record based on his, student ID.
I know there are some districts that don't do a lot of
And- and-
disciplining and don't do a lot of,
And we've had at least one case that I know about where we did not get records in a timely fashion. We accepted somebody, we got the records after the fact. It was not a student who we would have accepted, and we rescinded that acceptance.
my other comment is I know the last time we looked at school of choice numbers, we had 400, it was the exact same number, it wasn't this year though, but we had 400 existing school of choice students. And that year we had exactly 400 students that had chosen, were in other districts outside of our district as school of choice to someone else. And my concern is always the revolving door, that I am much more interested in protecting Waterford and Waterford's, tightening our, maybe we just need to be a little leaner and meaner, if we lose students, but we can be awesome because we don't have the extra added administrative costs or additional discipline issues. And I know obviously we're going to have some attendance issues based on what the data tells us, but that continues to be my struggle, that it becomes a revolving door. And at some point, we're just going to put another name on our school district. It's no longer Waterford. And our value is in who we are in our community and the kids that we know and the bus drivers that know the kids that get on the bus, so we lose that, and our parents lose that, and we lose the volunteers in the classroom, and they're all very real changes to our learning environment when we.
I was quoting you, has been pretty consistent that, yes, there's some, but it's not hundreds, it's not even 100, it's more in the, 30 to 40 range, and not all of them are making the decision because, oh my gosh, I don't want to go to school there. People make other decisions to leave. Jobs change, marriages change. Things happen, and people leave the school district. Yes, included, not just us. Everybody.
So hearing all that, that's why I think what we're talking about with options, so schools of choice, 100 students, it would raise that much money. If we don't want to do that, what is option A, option B, option C that we could do to raise that same amount of money and I understand it would be a cut, but I'd rather see options. And then this has become right back to here because this is a positive one. But I just feel like this is it. And if we don't, and I just feel right here, if we don't want to do the schools of choice, then she just, like Joan just said, well, then it's not giving teachers raises. And is that really true? I mean, there are other things we could do to cut in other places in the district that we don't even know about because we don't have options up here. So that's where I keep feeling like getting a rub from this. I just feel like this is just one thing up here.
Because you're the only one at the table I'm hearing say the word cut. So I don't see why we give the administration any direction to make any cuts when it's just coming from one voice. I understand your opinion, we all accept the opinion, but once we become a majority, we move on.
I'm just telling you.
And I appreciate that, but your one voice, I don't think that directs the district to come back
I'm
with
not
cuts.
directing, I'm asking for options, and then with those options, we would direct. But having options is a good thing.
Well, I'm not hearing that. I'm not hearing cuts.
Nobody's talking about cuts. I think what we're talking about is those options. Now, this is a working document here. You're making changes and we're moving along, and we're not obviously voting on the budget here tonight. This is really the kickoff of the process. But as we've seen in the past, things come up as we move closer and closer to the budget process. So I think what Mary's highlighting is that, let's say we're not using the word cut at all. Let's say
Okay,
what
what area do you want them to move it from?
Can I finish?
Well, I'm trying to help them get direction.
I'm trying to give them some feedback here.
You're saying the same thing without using the word cut. At least Mary used the word cut, I understand that.
Well, I made my point earlier at the onset that my wholehearted opinion is that teachers, service workers in this district, they deserve more money.
We all agree with that.
We all agree with that. Now we defer, and maybe you concur with Keith and maybe you don't, when we come talking about the administrative pay. People that are making $100,000 plus a year. And I'm not talking about cuts, but if you're gonna start putting that out there, what I'm gonna tell you is that I see the people who are doing the day-to-day work, if we're gonna give money back to them, if we're gonna give any kind of portions of money from this budget, it should be to those employees. We should be talking to our unions, and we should be saying it should be going to those service workers, it should be going to those employees, those people who are on the front lines on the day-to-day dealing with our kids. We talked about respect earlier, and we talked about a way of showing respect to some extent. You know, my wholehearted philosophy as an administrator is that you treat your employees well, and two, you pay them what they deserve. You give them equitable pay for the hard work that they've done. And that's what I'm saying for our teachers as well. We defer, and we don't need to argue
We
the
don't
point.
disagree. I think principals are day-to-day. I think they are boots on the
And
ground.
I agree with principals. I'm not disagreeing with principals. I think they make 90-some thousand a year, but they're putting a lot of hours. But when we start talking about higher up than that, and I think Keith threw the figure out there before, I think the average was 105,000, 110,000, and I'm going off the number that I remember that you talked about when we had our forum on budget a few months ago. But that's just, you know, where we defer.
I appreciate your comments, and I completely disagree, but I appreciate that's your thoughts.
But I think,
But I'm not sensing that as a board.
But I sense something here as a board, because Joan hasn't made up her mind on totally agreeing with school choice, right? Is that fair, Joan?
That has nothing to do with, there's still money in the budget to give money to the staff. The question is how much. I'm not looking to make cuts. I'm not looking to make cuts. And I'd like to add something relative to our administrators, John Paul. It feels very much to me like when you say, we treat people with respect, but what you're really saying is we treat people with respect except our administrators.
No.
But what, so what you're if I'm understanding, because we keep talking around it, but you believe that the administrators at the central office level need to take a pay cut.
It's to be determined, and that's what this
But
process
that's what you're
is.
advocating,
Right now,
that you'd
that's,
like to see as one of the options.
yeah, well, I guess, yeah, that is where I'm looking along the lines of. If I'm talking about somebody who's making $110,000 a year, who Keith says is very important, and you said, I think, you know, to the extent that, you know, they were along the lines of, you know, of the most important people, I think it's the day-to-day people.
Nobody thinks they're the most
So
important
you're talking
people.
about 6 people, you take a 10% cut. and you
Well, I'm
say
saying it's a start, it's a
$60,000?
symbolic, it's a symbolic.
Oh, it's a symbolic
To them.
stamina.
Well, you know, John, this is where we defer, and like I said, you know.
You mean defer, is that what you mean?
Yeah, this is where we are in disagreement here, okay? And that's all it is that conversation.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, we can't, you know, in school of choice, I think is a very, I don't know, emotional topic or whatever. There are people that are for it. There are people really, really opposed to it. You know, I don't know. We've heard from people before who are school of choice. And I remember a mom who came in a year or two ago, and she's the PTA president at Grayson. And she, you know, she doesn't live in Waterford. She's a school of choice, but she talked about the 20 hours a week of volunteering she does at the school. Her kids were, you know, straight A students basically, you know, and that's obviously a great fit. But, you know, there's a lot of people here in this room tonight, and I know it's not normal, but we've never had this many people at a study session. I'd love to give people the opportunity to weigh in. You know, what do they think? What's the community think? You know, forget us 7, what's the community think?
If you get cold, just close that window. Yeah, if you don't mind. If you get cold,
I just want to add one more thing,
Thank you.
and I agree, we have to respectfully disagree on the subject, but we have to be able to compete with our surrounding districts. We have to be able to attract the brightest and the best. I'm going to use Bill Holbrook because he's sitting in the room. He has saved this district literally millions. He has kept us from going into bankruptcy. He has kept us off from the state's list. He has allowed us over a very short amount of time. And I get that it was done collaboratively throughout the entire district, but he had to put that in place. He had to keep us in the black. And if we can't attract someone of that caliber, there are far greater costs that we're going to incur than what we're going to save by penny pinching on what we pay our administrators. Forgive me, but We've already done a benchmark. You already know that we're not higher than our surrounding districts. We're in the middle and in some places at the bottom. And we have to compete with our surrounding districts. It is a job market just like any other job market, and people have choices, as you heard at the beginning. We've had several administrators that have left to go to private sector or to go to other school districts. And we need to keep our teachers. That's one of the issues we've talked about many, many times. But in the same regard, we have to make sure that we are keeping those people who are working so hard for our kids at the administrative level as well. And to single them out, to me, would be so detrimental to the morale of this district and to what it means in Waterford when we say we are all in this together.
I respectfully disagree, and I'm gonna say that I don't think you're being fair to them, because I think that you're implying that they're only here because of what they're being paid. I would
It
think
is a
that,
consideration.
and I would
At the end
think
of the day,
though,
we're all
I can
here
tell you
to-
my job, I don't have my job because I'm there because of what they pay me. It's along the lines of I enjoy the environment that I'm in. I learned a while ago that sometimes, the environment and the people that you work with is in many ways more important in what you're doing and the cause that you're doing. All of us as board members, we make, not much money doing this, about $20, $25. I don't even know what the board pay is. It's not much at all. And we all spend a lot of time, here at board meetings and community events. We're doing it because we believe in the district and we believe in what we're doing. And I think that administrators feel the same. And that's just what my take is that you keep asserting that if we cut their pay in any way, an administrator, right, talking about a central office administrator, if we cut their pay, they're gonna get out of here because we cut $5,000 from their pay.
No, I'm just saying we're disrespecting them.
We're disrespectful.
You're right. Talk about
I
respect.
disagree.
And, okay, regardless of what anybody I work with makes, if you give them a raise, I should get a raise. If you give them a pay cut, give me a pay cut. But don't tell me that you gave them a raise and me a pay cut.
I'm just telling you from a working class environment that if I got a $13 or if I got a $2 an hour raise and I'm making $13 an hour, and then I heard that also the people at the top got a raise proportional to what I got percentage wise, and maybe they got $5,000, I'd be pretty angry, because I would say that
You wouldn't try to better yourself and try to become.
I would.
So anyway,
Take that job.
we're not gonna cut administrators' pay. I think we need to move on and.
It's just a point.
Do we wanna open it up and take any public comments? I mean, can I make a motion that we kinda add that? I mean, just, there's so many here, we've never had a study session, and maybe if there's nobody that wants to comment on anything, so be it, we move on, but I guess I'd like to hear from some people what they think too.
There were 4 or 5 people, I think, in the room when you asked earlier, and we have a full room here.
You made a motion?
I guess it's up to you, I'd
It's
like to make a
just
motion
really
that we
at the
add
direction of the board president.
another item to hear some audience comments of what they've heard so far tonight, some of these ideas.
But these are opinions. Again,
We're giving opinions.
It's our community.
Again, this is a school board, not a public meeting. This is a school meeting, not a public meeting. It is a school board meeting in the public.
All school board meetings are public.
They are school board meetings in the public. They are not public meetings.
How is that so?
I don't know.
We would be in violation of the
Well,
Open
we haven't
Meetings
got a
Act.
second, so
That's
there's no
not
sense
true.
in
I'll
second.
second it. I'll
Okay.
second it.
And all I'm saying is, we still have another agenda item, which, okay, I got word from multiple board members. I'm really busy, I can't put that on the agenda. You surprised me, you put it on the agenda. It's not.
But
it's
we're
not
here
being-
right now.
But it's not on TV, you can't put it on the agenda, but now you want to add to the agenda. It's just kind of like,
But it's
You also
because we
heard
have
it was
30
budget
people
tonight.
here, we've
But there's
never
always a
had,
reason.
right, there's
Those
no
are
reason.
for
No, we have-
transparency.
there's people here, we haven't
Okay.
had that
We have a
before.
full
Why not?
room.
All right,
This is about transparency to our community.
it is, and they'll watch my vote, which will be
Okay,
a
and
no.
that,
So,
so can we go from the
It's not,
beginning?
I just want to say, any one of us, we are available to you, and if you do have comments or anything that you'd like to talk about, I would very much relish the opportunity of talking with you one-on-one.
If I may, we have people here tonight. They can address the entire board in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. I don't see the benefit of them meeting with board members individually, one-on-one, when they have an opportunity to talk to all the board, collect a majority of the board here and the administration all in one shot. They're here, we're here. Let's listen.
I guess too, I would add that on the agenda, correct me if I'm wrong, I could be wrong, normally audience comments on non-action items come after information items, yet tonight it's before.
We don't have any information on it, it's not
I
on the
think tonight,
agenda.
this is information.
It's a study session.
It's information. It's just my opinion. You know what? I mean, if we don't want to hear from them, that's fine. I would like to hear. There's been people here, they've made some comments. I've heard some different noises. I don't think it's bad. I don't see that it's going to keep us here an extra 3 hours, but I'd love to know their take on school of choice. What do they think?
And, yeah, I would again add that we have the people here. This is an open meeting. And if you don't support allowing them to speak to us, then why is it if you're gonna vote no? I've given my reasons why I will vote yes. That's what I intend to
I
do.
totally agree with Rob, it's a meeting of the board. You've sent me multiple emails saying you're too busy to add more stuff to the agenda. You want to add more to the agenda. I
That was-
respect everyone's opinion. You asked my opinion.
Oh, yeah, I'm
I already
sorry.
said,
I
no, I'm gonna
apologize.
vote no. I'm not
I
ashamed
apologize.
about
Go
it.
ahead.
I'm being honest with them.
Okay. Can I chime in, because it was directed at me, so I just have an opportunity. I did send you that email, but I did say in that email that it's not about the meeting, it's about what's going on before the meeting. Tuesday night, I had a 3-hour
We know,
task
we know.
force.
We know
Well,
that.
they don't know, excuse me.
This is our meeting.
A bullet task force meeting,
We're all busy,
last
John
night, the YA meeting, tonight this, and tomorrow Waterford Promise that I have to do prep work for. It was not about this meeting here tonight. It was about what was going into this meeting, being able to be prepared for this meeting.
And to call out a board member and say, well, why are you voting yes, why are you voting no? Again, to ask for the public's input when they don't have all the knowledge. Our job is to vote on what is best for Waterford. You weren't here when we closed schools. Bob was. He was very torn because the public was, don't close my school. They all wanted schools closed. If we listen to the public on their opinion of what we can and can't do, we don't have a bucket load of money. We have to make decisions. And some of these decisions are unpopular. I'm not here to make everyone happy. I'm not here to listen to 30 people out of the, I don't know what we have in the township, 65?
40,000?
74.
No,
74? Wow. 74,000. And again, it's not to diminish the group, the size, but to listen to a portion of a group and to give a high value point to that. Again, if I left it to the public to decide whether I close schools, the public doesn't pick the superintendent, the board does. The public doesn't set the budget, the board does. We have to make decisions, and that is part of our job, is making decisions. It's not listening to a small group and then getting off track because maybe you got bad information on bullying. So we're gonna start a whole big thing because maybe something got skewed a little bit. If we got involved in teachers' evaluations in a building and taking that power away from the principal or the administration and just get the board involved, let's skip everybody else, we could cause serious problems because the public wants us. Well, the public is a dozen people, 50 people, 200 people. It's what is best for the district. I am here to support what's best for the district. I'm not here to showboat. I'm not here to stare at a camera. I'm not here to be popular. I'm here to do a job. Sometimes that job sucks.
And it does sometimes, but I can tell you that I think every single one of us in this room is here to do what's best for the district. That is my intention, and it always has been. We have community members here. I am elected as a board trustee to represent the community. We all run in elections. We are voted in by the people. If there are 40 people in this room, they are a representative of the community. Are we gonna have 70,000 plus odd people here? No, obviously, we couldn't fit that in this room. But we do have a portion of the community here to talk or to hear input on this very important issue, the budget. I don't think there's any question that any one of us, our intentions are to represent the community. As trustees, we are entrusted by the community to act in their best interest. But we can only act in their best interest if we are getting the knowledge and the information from the community. Some of us have been very involved in, for example, the bullying issue and hearing from a lot of parents, and some of us haven't heard as much.
for whatever reason that is, but,
How do you know that?
well, and I apologize. My comment is that I did hear a lot on the bullying, but because of that, I gauge that based off of my level of urgency and importance that I place on that issue. Other board members don't agree with me. So what I would infer from that is that you are not hearing what I am hearing.
It's very dangerous
So-
to make
so,
those
well,
assumptions
well,
about your
well,
fellow board members who
Well,
are
I'm just
very
telling you,
active.
okay. So now, what I'm saying is we have a community here. We have a number of people that would like to address this board. I would support it. This is what we're here to do.
We also too, if I can, on the agenda number 7, we do have audience comments. So I think when a few of us said it's a board member, it's not a public meeting, we have that option on here. It just happened to be before we started discussing, nobody had anything to say at that point. I mean, it was out there, but we could have had 4 hours of audience comments. We have it on the agenda. We have it on the agenda to have audience make comments, but just because it happened to be before our talk on this budget, they didn't speak, and maybe nobody would speak. Maybe we'd open it up and there'll be not one person that would say anything. But to offer that option up for the audience to speak before our discussion and not give them that same opportunity afterwards, I think it's a bad decision. But I'm one person. I'll say it, I'm one, so.
And I appreciate that. And there is a public comment on the budget, and there'll be public meetings on the budget. And I did opportunity to speak on the budget. I do feel like I'm being bullied from the bully committee because I'm not on that committee, which
I feel the same way.
Which, okay, I understand.
Right.
I went to Keith and said, as board president, I think it's my responsibility that perhaps I should be on that committee. But the decision was to let 2 members, which you and
I thought you were on the committee.
No, I'm not on the, I said I will come or not come to any meeting because I know it's gonna come to me as a presentation and I'm willing to absorb what the committee does. I was not trying to be the 3rd board member. I felt it's appropriately replaced. But apparently all I'm gonna hear is that you're ready to make changes in the bullying situation. I think that's disrespectful to the rest of us on the board who are not on that committee.
Never said that I was gonna make changes. I thought.
You said, let's add social work.
Well, I thought what was disrespectful was when you said you weren't gonna listen to what the bullying task force's recommendations were, you were gonna go to Keith.
I said, I'm not ready to listen.
No, you said you were not
You're
going
not
to.
done yet. Well, then, don't.
Yeah,
Anyways.
and I wrote it down, and it was very
Okay, you're right.
disrespectful. And we can watch it on video, I guess, if the video's here.
That was me.
Did you mean to say that?
I thought I said I was not prepared.
Well, maybe you misspoke.
That's greatly possible
What are we voting on? I'm sorry.
to add public discussion again on the budget. Those in favor? Opposed? Motion fails. We move to Board of Education Ethics.
Okay,
They can excuse her.
Thank you, Mr. Holbrook. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you.
I see Mr. Holbrook, and she just didn't know.
I blinked on her last name. Blinked on her last name. Blinked on her last name.
Danielle.
Corbeil?
Danielle. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Corbeil.
Bill, Danielle. Yeah.
Thank you.
I put a tremendous amount of work in what I think this board needs, some guidance in governance, procedure, ethics. I got a lot of comments from board members saying we shouldn't do it tonight. If you don't want to do it tonight, I'm going to go home now.
Okay, I make a motion that we don't do it tonight.
Are you going to let us speak to them?
I will be happy to stay here afterwards.
We'll be here
We
for
just
the budget.
voted, they
Public
just
comment.
voted it
I
down.
used to be, well, I.
Okay, we understand, I understand.
She asked me a question.
But
Or me to
we're in
come.
the middle of a vote on the board
I'm
procedure.
sorry, I thought you had finished.
So,
I made a motion to table this to another date. I'm not prepared to look at anything.
I will agree with whatever the majority, obviously, I will support that. I believe that this board is in dire need of talking about board ethics. I think our board governance, only this board can govern itself. There is no other entity allowed, we report to the general public and we must govern ourselves. We must govern ourselves ethically, we must treat one another with respect, and we must ensure that every decision, every conversation, everything that we do, every fiber of our being is always what's in the best interest of the Waterford School District. And I don't think that that's happening. I think this board has been detrimental and in fact has in some cases done irreparable harm to this district. And I believe that it's a very, very pressing conversation that we need to have collectively.
I absolutely agree with Ms. Sutherland as well. I think there's been a lot of situations that have happened throughout the last year, year and a half that are very unethical by multiple different board members. I think it would be in very poor taste to even.
So do you want to continue?
This is open for discussion.
Yeah, but I'm honestly, the three of you have
I
been.
thought Joan did.
No.
But Joan supported doing it. Rob said he would do it. You three have told me all week.
Oh, I'll second it. I thought
So
Joan
if you're,
did.
if, I'm saying that if you guys want to remove it, I'll be a fourth vote and we can.
But I think we're providing our reasoning as to why.
No, that's.
I totally respect your reasons.
Okay, we'll let him finish.
Okay, I just want to.
But I understand it's
It had been
important.
seconded, so that's why.
I'll second. We already had a second?
Right, so
Yeah.
now we can discuss.
So second, so yeah, my thing is, I agree with Joan 100%. John, the information you provided, I've said for the last 2 weeks, it is very good information that we all should be looking at and following. We make mistakes. I'll be the first one to say, I've done some stuff as a board member, said stuff that I regret afterwards. But I will say publicly, I think it would be a poor decision to vote down hearing from the public about a budget, yet go into ethics. And I think it would be best served to, like you made the motion and we had a second, to end the meeting, and at another date, we'll discuss it.
So do you want to keep it on?
No, you're talking about second.
I know, but I'm just trying to get where you're going with it.
No, I'm saying I agree with that decision.
Oh.
It's
We're
important. to
moving
move.
publicly, TV cameras rolling, everybody comes, public input.
Yep.
Any other comments? All in favor?
I have a comment, I'm sorry. So I agree, we definitely have to look at ourselves as a board. We do govern ourselves. We have to make sure we are participating in a way that is professional, that is clear, and that we are respectful towards one another. And I think there are board members on this board that have not acted that way. So I would also include that when that does not happen, that board members do speak up and say things when that happens. So that's something that we have to look wholeheartedly as a board.
And I think if you look at my gathering, that those things are addressed in there.
Yes, they are, but they should have been dealt with previously.
But I can't go backwards.
Okay, and I'm just saying, okay? In addition, I think it would be negligent of us to not include the superintendent in this discussion as well. That we should also additionally, just within reason, that if we're gonna be held to ethics, that our superintendent is also held to ethics. Because we work collaboratively as a board and with the superintendent. We know that everything we do, we have to also have agreement. And I think if we all can come to an agreement with the superintendent and the board, that it's gonna be that much more stronger of rules that we're gonna follow.
I'd like to comment too. I'm definitely in favor of moving this to a regular meeting where it's televised. I found it ironic that ethics would be talked about in a meeting that isn't televised. And I think that we should also add to our discussion, going back into the bylaws that are posted on our Waterford website, and just review the philosophy of the board and review the board powers. Because our ethics are based on, you bounce those ethics off of what our job is, what we're here and what we're elected to do. I think we have a big disconnect on lots of things about what we think our role is and what we think our role isn't. And I ran on transparency, academic achievement, and fiscal responsibility. And everything I've done, I believe, has been through that vein. I believe that people disagree with me on that. So I want to have this discussion on camera, at a regular meeting and with the opportunity to hear from the public afterwards too about it. So I'm very, very glad that this is, as I requested before, that this part would be put on camera next meeting.
So, I'm just gonna add one comment. For those who don't, okay, this is why we have study sessions. They're interactive, there's a lot of opinions, and it's much better addressed in this setting. You get work done in an hour, 2 hours, than 4 hours when we put the cameras on. But I don't mind being there till 11, 12. I will let everybody know that I'm going to put it on as information again, information item. I'm not expecting us to vote on it. Out of respect for everybody's time, it's a busy time. All those in favor?
Yeah, I have a comment again.
We're voting.
All those in favor?
I have a right to make a comment. I have to address the issue.
I called the question.
Well, I have a right
We have
to.
to vote now.
I have,
The
I have,
question's
a-
been called.
that's not very ethical.
Okay, well, that's Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay.
Sorry. All those in favor? Opposed?
Okay.
Removing it from the agenda?
Yeah, moving it
wanna
from the
make sure.
agenda.
I'm
With that, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.